Hi everyone. In this first video for lifespan development, I'll be going over major developmental theories. And this is part one of the video where I'll be going over the first half, and then obviously the second part will do the second. So we'll start with looking at what exactly makes up a theory. And your textbook does a nice job of explaining this. The word theory gets thrown around a lot, and sometimes it's hard to tell like what exactly is being discussed when we talk about theory. So I pulled out these four main criteria from your text that I think are the most helpful when understanding a theory. So first off, which phenomena is the theory trying to explain, which is sometimes called the range of accountability. So within the field of human development, there are many different theories, including those that account for language development, cognitive development, attachment, and so on. And although the principles of one theory may have relevance to another area of knowledge, a theory is supposed to be evaluated in terms of what it is originally intended to explain. So if you're looking at a cognitive theory, then you're going to want to evaluate that theory based on what it says about cognition and cognitive development, even though it might be relevant and probably is to other theories, such as those about learning, for example. Secondly, what assumption is the theory making? So what are the guiding premises underlying the logic of a theory? Okay, so what assumptions? What does the theory predict? So theories add new levels of understanding by suggesting that there are different relationships between different phenomena, by unifying diverse observations, so different things that you're seeing, how they connect, and identifying the importance of events that may have gone unnoticed otherwise. Theories of human development offer predictions about changes that can be expected from one period or stage of life to the next, and hypotheses about what the mechanisms or processes are that account for the change that we're seeing. And that goes into this fourth one. How does the theory explain change or development? And so as we go through each of the theories in this lecture and in the next one, I'll be focusing in on these four different criteria. Okay? And we'll start here with the theory of evolution. Okay, so the phenomena explained with the theory of evolution is primarily behavioral adaptation, and the assumptions that are being made. Well, first, natural selection, which basically says that individuals who are best suited to the immediate features of their environment are most likely to survive and reproduce. So they are considered to be the best fit for that particular environment, and hence they'll thrive. If they are more likely to survive, that also means that their offspring, if they have them, are also most likely to survive, which means that they'll continue to populate, while those who are less fit will die off. Now, the prediction that's being made with the theory of evolution is that if an environment changes, only those who adapt or evolve will survive. Okay. Now, what about change? Well, evolutionary change takes place slowly and over several generations. And with the focus on reproductive success that is had in this particular theory, it highlights three different main stages of development, if you will. First is healthy growth and development leading up to the reproductive period. So everything that leads up to puberty. And this period during infancy, childhood, and early adolescence is the period when humans are most vulnerable because they're fully dependent on someone else for survival. So they come into the world with some innate capacities and potentials to help ensure their survival. For example, babies can be very annoying and they cry a whole lot, but they're also very cute, and that cuteness and that smiling and social interaction helps the parent to want to take care of them. And so that is an evolutionary strength that they have when they're born. This is also a really important period, obviously, because childhood experiences affect the development of a lot of things that have implications for the future, like attachment bonds, building of social competence, and learning how to problem solve. So that's stage one. Then stage two, according to the theory of evolution, involves success in mating and the conception of offspring. This requires solutions to lots of different adaptive problems that come with dating. Anyone that's dated probably knows this. So first off, finding a mate. Okay, then outcompeting other potential partners and ensuring that your partner doesn't cheat or leave, and then reproducing and raising that child. Okay, and that goes into stage three, which is the ability to parent offspring so that they can survive, reach reproductive age, and bear offspring of their own. So the cycle continues. Note that because early humans died relatively young, the genome doesn't guide development in later life. This is influenced more by lifestyle, culture, and social resources, and is not considered one of the stages of the theory of evolution. Now, of course, you may be wondering, how does this apply at all to mental health? Why am I learning about evolution? But it actually does. So healthy development, even from an evolutionary perspective, requires a supportive environment where the individual is more likely to survive to reproductive age, okay? Now, if someone was raised in an abusive household, for example, their capacity for attachment and social interaction are likely negatively impacted. Accordingly, their ability to locate a mate and develop a healthy relationship that can lead to offspring is going to be hindered. However, if they're able to access resources within their environment, like therapy, for example, they may be able to develop the skills that they were prevented from having in childhood and still develop in a healthy way according to this theory, because they're able to reach reproductive age and have offspring. Another example is provided in your text and maybe a little bit easier to understand potentially. So we know that we're social creatures and our brains actually detect social interaction. So that means they also tell us and notice when we have inadequate social bonds, and they view this as a source of threat because we need social interaction. So when people sense that their social connections are inadequate, they experience loneliness, which we know as training clinicians has a profound effect on mental health and is associated with depression. Okay, so there you go, a little bit about how evolution matters for mental health. Switching gears a little bit to psychoanalytic theory. This one you may already be familiar with from your counseling theories class, but here's a little refresher. So the phenomena being explained by this theory is psychological functioning, behavior, and personality development. And psychoanalytic theories basically are assuming or emphasizing the importance of emotion, unconscious mental processes, the symbolic meaning of behavior, and the enduring effects of early experience on later development. So childhood experiences, and namely early primary social ties, shape adult thoughts and behaviors and future ability to form healthy attachments. Development also involves efforts to find acceptable outlets for strong, often socially unacceptable impulses. So how to satisfy those in an acceptable way. For prediction, the expectations of others are internalized and given personal meaning, and these account for how a child and later an adult translate the demands of the interpersonal world into their own personal way of functioning. This is true of both negative expectations and positive ones. Now, what about change? Well, first we have an explanation of personality development, which involves shifts in control between three different structures of personality, which you can see here from this graphic from PsychPoint. So first is the id, which are the instincts and impulses, and this exists from birth and expresses its demands according to the pleasure principle. Basically, people are motivated to seek pleasure and avoid pain. We can see this in babies, right? They just want to be soothed all the time. They don't really care about others. And you can also see the id in action with behaviors like cutting in line, right? You aren't necessarily considering how your behavior is impacting anyone else, or you consider it, but you don't really care. Then there's the ego, which begins to develop in the first 6 to 8 months of life and involves the perception of self. So how you see your physical self, your self-concept, your self-esteem, and also the mental functions that have to do with your relation to the environment. So things like perception, learning, memory, and judgment. The ego develops skills for dealing with the realities of the interpersonal world and learning to satisfy needs in a way that is acceptable in this world. This involves what's called secondary process thought, which is basically planning things before acting, so thinking ahead. Finally, the superego begins to develop around ages 5 to 6 and tells us which behaviors are improper or unacceptable and which behaviors are acceptable and worthy of praise. This is the part that makes you feel anxious or guilty when you think about doing something bad, like cheating on a test. Now, if the ego is strong and can develop balance between the id and the superego, then the person feels satisfied and is free from feelings of guilt and worthlessness. It is the breakdown of the ego that leads to mental disorders. If the ego is not strong enough, the person may struggle with strong desires for pleasure and strong constraints against attaining those desires. So they feel unsatisfied or they feel guilty or anxious. Change is also explained through the psychosexual stages, and I've provided a table here that's fairly self-explanatory and has gone over in depth much more in your text. But you can see here that there are the stages, the approximate ages for each, the libido focus, major developmental tasks, and potential adult fixations at each stage. I've also linked a video on our Canvas page that goes into all of this in more depth and in a more engaging way than I think I could. So that's also there. All right, now the psychosexual stages have largely been seen as problematic for lots of reasons, but psychoanalytic theory also offers a related theory that shifts focus to social relationships as the primary motivation in life, as opposed to sexual urges and drives. Now, according to object relations theory, humans have basic needs for connection, contact, and meaningful relationships. The self is formed in relationship with primary objects, which are people, right? Especially the mother, father, or other close caregivers. At first, the infant enjoys these isolated events of the caregiving relationship, which basically involve the child wanting the caregiver to meet their needs. Next, infants are going to enjoy engaging in more rhythmic interactions that are social and not solely focused on meeting their basic needs. So this is when the child seeks out interaction with the caregiver. Then there is a process of separation and individuation, which continues into adolescence and adult life. And here tension arises between wanting to explore the environment outside and beyond of the caregiver, while simultaneously wanting to be reassured of the caregiver's continued presence. And when this is done well, the child is able to become more individuated. Okay, so this will be our break for this first part of the video. The next lecture that I do for organizing themes is going to cover cognitive learning and systems theories. All right, so let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for listening.